I would say the transition of the television show to live-action motion picture doesn't have a great track record. I have enough movies to continue this series to part 3 and part 4 and maybe more. Satire seems to be the big buzzword with most of these films. Your 21 Jump Street, your Chips, your Starsky and Hutch, and so on and so forth were not satirical television shows. And for some reason, they turn into unfunny satirical movies. I get what the filmmakers are going for, but they fail miserably 95% of the time. I would say the Brady Bunch duology is one that got it right. This time out, we're going to take a second look at some television shows that were turned into terrible or subpar movies. Of course, these are all my opinions and always up for debate and interpretation. Art is subject, after all, to interpretation, and I hold movies as an art form. Just as there is art in museums that I deem terrible, there are also plenty of movies that hold the same label. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment area, and let's delve into 10 movies that failed making the leap from the small screen to the big screen. The Avengers is a 1998 American satirical spy action comedy film directed by Jeremiah Chechik, an adaptation of the 1961 to 1969 British television series of the same name. It stars Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman as secret agents, John Steed and Emma Peel, and Sean Connery as Sir August de Wynter. And Sean Connery as Sir August de Wynter, if you didn't understand that through that terrible Sean Connery accent. A mad scientist bent on controlling the world's weather. Patrick Macnee, Steed in the original series, makes a vocal cameo as the voice of Invisible Jones. Okay. Warner Brothers, the film's distributor, refused to allow any early press screenings for movie reviewers. Such a decision is often made when a studio and/or distributor knows a film will not be received well and pre-released reviews would only be negative. The film was originally scheduled to open earlier in June of 1998, but was pushed back until August, often referred to as the dumping ground for films that are not felt to be strong enough to open on the more lucrative holiday weekends in early summer. So that makes me think, if your viewer knows that there was no pre-release reviews, there was no press screenings, I mean, people are going to know that, right? That people couldn't review the movie before it came out. Isn't that going to automatically trigger in people's brains that the movie sucks? Wouldn't that automatically make them not go see it anyways? Maybe not so much back then, but now with the internet, I think that would more hold true. Maybe not back in the 90s. Just a thought. The film underperformed at the box office, only grossing $54.7 million against its $60 million budget, and was met with negative reviews from critics. Due to internal wrangling at Warner Brothers, the decision was made to vastly cut down the running time after test screenings, reducing the 115-minute film to 89 minutes, sacrificing much coherence and continuity in the process. Take out the beginning credits of 3 minutes and the ending credits of 5 minutes, we basically have an 80-minute movie here. I think television movies are about that long, aren't they? With commercials, they become 2 hours. I have to imagine a lot of this film ended up on the chopping room floor. Okay, if you knew the movie sucked anyways, and you chopped it down to 89 minutes, why not just make it 115 minutes? At least give the people their money's worth. Give them a couple-hour movie at least. They paid for it. If 89 minutes of it's gonna suck, you might as well make 115 minutes of it suck. Just a thought. Key scenes removed include the opening sequence in which Mrs. Peel's evil clone infiltrates and destroys the Prospero Science installation. Early trailers included the scene where she says the word "How now, brown cow" and a false telephone box to gain admittance. These words are later used in the film when Steed and Peel use them to enter De Winter's island fortress in another telephone box. They really wanted that "How now, brown cow" in that movie. They really wanted those lines. That was very important for the screenplay. The movie was originally scored by composer Michael P.A.G.A.N, who included the original Avengers theme. However, he was unable to rescore the film after the radical editing, so was forced to drop out. The recut version of the film was scored by Joel McNeely. The original cut has yet to surface. Warner Brothers has no plans to release a director's cut or special edition in any form, despite the fact that director Jeremiah Chechik has offered to recut the film for free. Well, of course, if he made it, he wants to have it in the best presentation possible, not hacked to death by a fucking studio in their suits. Anyways, that's what I think. The opening fight scene is extremely lame and paints the picture of what the rest of this movie is going to be like. Extremely lazy. I was in a movie, an Indiana Jones fan film, and we put together a fight scene in about 10-15 minutes. That was pretty lame. That's exactly what this seems like. That they took 10 to 15 minutes to come up with this fight scene. I watched this years ago and could remember it was terrible, and I watched again for this video, and it's still pretty terrible. I do have to hand it to them for one thing. They had drones, a little ahead of their time. Of course, they were in the shape of bees, but why not bees? The movie is just a disaster and not remotely good. The only saving grace is Sean Connery. It's always fun watching him chew up his lines on screen. I'm not sure or not if he was having fun playing the villain in this case, but it sure looks like he did. I guess that's called acting. Just the facts. My name is Chris. I make videos. This section of the video is about Dragnet. Dragnet was a television show. Sometimes later it became a movie. This is a terrible impression of Joe Friday. I don't do good impressions. The Dragnet TV series was one of the most influential police procedurals in television history. It began as a radio show in 1949 before transitioning to TV in 1951. Created and produced by Jack Webb, who also starred as Joe Friday, the series is celebrated for its realistic portrayal of police work and its impact on the crime genre. Dragnet the movie is a 1987 American buddy cop comedy film directed and co-written by Tom Mankiewicz. Mankiewicz in his directorial debut. Starring Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks, the film is based on the radio and television crime drama of the same name. The screenplay both a parody of and a homage to the long-running television series. It was written by Dan Aykroyd, Mankiewicz, and Alan Quibble. Why do you people have to have such hard-pronounced names? And now I just seem like an asshole because I'm not pronouncing them correctly. Thanks a lot. Thank your parents for me. The original music score is by Ira Newborn. Thank you, Ira, for having sensible parents. Aykroyd plays Joe Friday, nephew of the original series protagonist, who was also Joe Friday, while Hanks plays Pep Streebek. Streebek? Pep? Okay. His new partner, Harry Morgan, reprises his role from the 1967 to 70 television revival of the 1966 television film as Bill Gannon, the original Friday's partner. I guess the 1966 television film must have been the pilot. He's now a captain and Friday and Streebek's boss. This was a silly movie that only Dan Aykroyd can pull off as he's into all that babble talk. He plays it very dry, just like Jack Webb. It's not as easy as you think to do that. I just tried it and it's hard. My version was terrible, as you heard. Dan Aykroyd just has that natural tone in order to pull it off. This movie was also made during what I called the Tom Hanks goofy movie phase. You know, when Bachelor Party, Splash, Joe versus the Volcano, all those movies before he became more of a serious actor. I miss the old Tom Hanks. I love Bosom Buddies.
When we first moved to New York, we had a great apartment that was dirt cheap.
And we found out why it was so cheap.
Our friend Amy said there was a great apartment in her building.
Dirt cheap, but it's a hotel for women. Okay, we made one adjustment.
Now these other ladies know us as Buffy and Hildegard.
But they also know us as Kip and Henry, Buffy and Hildy's brothers. I am crazy about the blonde.
This experience is going to make a great book.
See, it's all perfectly normal.
Then Tom Hanks got all Hollywood on us, gravitated to all those serious, dramatic roles. Where's the funny Tom Hanks that we knew? This movie is okay. It's really a toss-up if it goes on the naughty or nice list. It's not something I would sit down and watch unless I was making a video like this, so I suppose I don't recommend it. Perhaps if you're a big Tom Hanks or Dan Aykroyd fan, it's worth a look-see. Beyond that, spend your time doing something else. Watch Bachelor Party.
I'm getting married.
Yeah, let's have a bachelor party with chicks and guns and fire trucks and hookers and drugs and booze.
Yeah. All the things that make life worth living for.
Car 54, Where Are You? is a 1994 comedy film directed by Bill Fisherman and stars David Johansen and John C. McGinley. It is based on the television series of the same name, starring Joe E. Ross and Fred Gwynne, that ran from 1961 to 1963. And if you're not sure who Fred Gwynne is, he played Herman Munster on The Munsters. Reprising their roles from the original series are Nipsey Russell, whose character Anderson is now a captain, and Al Lewis, who was Grandpa on The Munsters, and who was Officer Schnauzer on Car 54, Where Are You? Partnered in Car 54 are the brash Gunther Tootie and the prim proper Francis Muldoon. Tootie and Muldoon's boss, Captain Anderson, assigns them to protect citizen Herbert Hortz, an important witness in the impending trial of local organized crime boss Don Motti. At the same time, the two officers must deal with upheavals in their personal lives, as well as the day-to-day trials and tribulations of being beat cops. Don Motti. Is that supposed to be a take on John Gotti? That's so stupid. Originally produced in 1990, this was one of the several titles from Orion Pictures, whose release was substantially delayed due to the company's financial struggles in the early 1990s. Well, you're making shit like this. I wonder you're having financial problems. The film was intended to be a musical comedy, which they kind of tried. They didn't cut the whole thing out. It says, but most of the musical numbers were cut following several studio edits and test screenings. The film received universally poor reviews. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 0% of 17 critics' reviews are positive. The film won the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Supporting Actress, Rosie O'Donnell. How did Rosie O'Donnell ever get famous? She's a worst supporting actress in every movie she's in. She also got worst supporting actress for the movie Exit to Eden and The Flintstones. And the movie itself won a Stinker's Bad Movie Award for the worst resurrection of a TV show and nominated for Worst Picture and Worst Actress. And of course, the worst actress was, well, Rosie O'Donnell. Because she sucks. I don't know how she became famous. It's just one of life's little mysteries. I had no idea this movie even existed. I remember the television show. I have no recollection of this movie ever coming out. I was just fascinated to watch it. And I thought, in the beginning, is this a fucking musical? Not only a musical, but the shittiest written music lyrics possible. Holy moly, this movie is shit, but it didn't turn into a musical. It seemed that way in the beginning. The movie was a terrible piece of shit. Car 54 should have just stayed lost. We really don't care where you are, Car 54. Just stay wherever you are. Just stay there. A root canal, a broken ankle, a kick in the nuts. I'm trying to think of things less painful than watching this shit movie. It's fucking terrible. It's beyond fucking terrible. It was absolute garbage. Why anyone thought this was a good idea or even remotely good enough to release to the general public has issues. Everyone should be ashamed of themselves for trying to destroy both comedy and cinema as we know it, both at the same time. The dirtiest thing ever said on television is, Ward, you were a little hard on the Beaver tonight. That's an old joke from my childhood. That's as good as jokes got back then. Leave It to Beaver is a 1997 American comedy film directed by Andy Cadiff, based on the 1957 to 1963 television series of the same name. And didn't they make a show like in the 90s, Return to Beaver or Leave It to Beaver Again or something like that? As far as the movie's concerned, many in-jokes and subplots relating to the series are adapted for the film. It features many of the original regular characters, mostly played by new actors, with some cameos by the original TV cast. The film was released by Universal Pictures on August 22nd of 1997, and it may be a big surprise to all of you, but the film was poorly received by critics, as it currently holds an approval rating of 21% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 28 reviews. The film grossed an estimated $10.9 million in the United States and Canada against a $15 million production budget. Why anyone thought this was remotely a good idea boggles my very existence. Why would you make a movie called Leave It to Beaver based on some obscure 1950s show? Although they did make Bewitched, they did make the Brady Bunch, and they did make the Beverly Hillbillies. Why do they keep doing this? Why do they keep doing this to themselves? Although the Brady Bunch duology was pretty good. Anyways, I digress. The thing is, the movie wasn't totally unwatchable. I did watch it and was mildly entertained. I actually watched the whole entire thing. I typically watch the entire movie. I just don't usually pay attention to it. If it's stupid, I'll have it on in the background, and this particular one I actually paid attention to, so take that as you will. The movie was both tropish and cliche-ish. Are those words? Tropish and cliche-ish? Are those both words? If they were both words, that is what this movie would be. Nothing original, pretty brainless, rather stupid, not remotely funny, and I watched it. That's the only praise I can give this movie, is that I made it through the entire thing without hating it. I still don't recommend it. If I wasn't watching it for this video, there's not an alternative world anywhere that I would have actually sat down and viewed it just to view it, but I viewed it for this video, and I watched it, I paid attention to it. It was alright. It's stupid, it's dumb, but I guess it entertained me. Take that as you will. I have not seen one episode of this show on the movie we're going to touch upon in just a second. I'll give you a hint. It was a soap opera from the 60s and the 70s. It engaged in the fantastical. It's been around forever. I've known about it forever. I've just never sat down and watched one episode. I'll have to remedy that. Anyways, I'm talking about Dark Shadows, and as far as the movie's concerned, it's a 2012 gothic dark fantasy film based on the gothic television soap opera of the same name, and it was directed by Tim Burton, and the film stars Johnny Depp alongside Michelle Pfeiffer, Ava Green, Jackie Earle Haley, Johnny Lee Miller, Chloe Grace Moritz, Helena Bonham Carter, and Bella Heathcote in a dual role, and Christopher Lee has a small role in the film, marking his 200th film appearance and his 5th and final collaboration with Burton. Jonathan Frid, star of the original Dark Shadows series, made a cameo appearance, and he died shortly before the film was released. The film had a limited release on May 10th of 2012 and was officially released the following day in North America. It performed poorly at the United States box office, but did well in foreign markets. Reviews for the film were mixed. Critics praised its visual style and consistent humor. I don't know about consistent humor. I didn't laugh once at it, but felt it lacked a focus or substantial plot and developed characters. I just thought the fucking thing was boring. In July of 2007, Warner Brothers acquired film rights for the gothic soap opera Dark Shadows from the estate of its creator, Dan Curtis. Johnny Depp had a childhood obsession with Dark Shadows, calling it a dream to portray Barnaby Collins, and ended up persuading Tim Burton to direct. The project's development was delayed by the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike, and after the strike was resolved, Burton was attached to direct the film. By 2009, screenwriter John August was writing a screenplay for Dark Shadows. In 2010, author and screenwriter Zeth Graham-Smith replaced August, but on the finished film, August did receive story credit. You know, I'm just bored reading this. I'm about as bored reading this as I was bored watching this movie. Anyways, filming began in May of 2011. The production took place entirely in England at both Pinewood Studios and on location. Depp attempted to emulate the rigidity and elegance of Jonathan Frid's original portrayal, but also drew inspiration from Max Schreck's performance as Nosferatu. I think they just released a movie based on Nosferatu just a few days ago. The film grossed $79.7 million in the United States and Canada and $165.8 million in other territories for a worldwide total of, drumroll, $245.5 million. For a Burton film, Dark Shadows achieved below average domestic box office takings, with many commentators attributing that to the domination of the Avengers, and not the Avengers of the British television series remake of the Avengers of the Marvel comic property. So it made $29.7 million in its first weekend, then $12.8 million in its second. It's a Tim Burton film. When Tim Burton first came around, his style was fresh and unique. Now, once you get to Dark Shadows, it just seems all his movies blend together and are pretty dull. If we've seen it all before, I mean, I think Batman, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, those were all great movies in my eyes. And then he got to this movie, he got to Willy Wonka, he did Alice in Wonderland. They were just all, ugh. It was done by, personally, I was done with Tim Burton at that point. I was just done with his style. It's all the same movie to me. They all blend into one. He's kind of got a John Woo-ish kind of thing going when John Woo came around, and it kind of lifted up the action movie a little bit. Now John Woo's movies are all the same, and other directors who have drawn from John Woo have done a much better job. I mean, look at the John Wick movies. Look how fantastical they are. I think I'm getting off subject here, but I guess my point is to the fact that Tim Burton is just all his movies now just blend into one, and his style is old, and he just has the same style. He doesn't change up at all, and it's boring. It's boring to me. So I didn't like this movie. I found it very boring. I had it on in the background. I tried to pay attention to it, and every time I did, Johnny Depp just put me to sleep. The whole thing was just boring, and I don't have anything good to say about it, except I was bored. I hate to be bored. When I watch Tim Burton movies these days, it just seems like the same movie, that's all. Go watch Edward Scissorhands. Go watch Beetlejuice. Those are far better films. Wild Wild West is a 1999 American steampunk western film directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, very loosely adapted from The Wild Wild West, a 1960s television series created by Michael Garrison. It is the only production since the television film More Wild Wild West from 1980 to feature the characters from the original series. Big surprise here, but the television show was much, much, much better and far, far, far superior. The film stars Will Smith, who previously collaborated with Sonnenfeld on Men in Black 2 years earlier, 1997, and Kevin Kline as two U.S. Secret Service agents who worked together to protect U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant and the United States from all manner of dangerous threats during the American Old West. The film features a supporting cast consisting of Kenneth Branagh, Selma Hayek, Ted Levine, and M. Emmett Walsh, as well as an orchestral film score by Western film score veteran Elmer Bernstein, and extensive visual effects courtesy of Industrial Light and Magic, but even Industrial Light and Magic couldn't save this shit show. Released theatrically in the United States on June 30th of 1999 by Warner Brothers and produced on a $170 million budget, making it one of the most expensive films ever made when adjusting for inflation at the time of its release. Wild Wild West was a commercial failure, grossing only $113.8 million domestically, and I was one of the idiots who went and contributed to that amount, and $108.3 million overseas for a worldwide total of $222.1 million. Receiving largely negative reviews from critics, the film was nominated for 8 Razzies and won 5 at the 20th Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Picture and Worst Original Song, that's for sure, for the song Wild Wild West. Wild Wild West, that's a Wild Wild West by Smith. Wild Wild West is a very bad movie in every sense. Will Smith plays the same character he plays in all his films. He plays Will Smith. He was great in Men in Black. Beyond that, Will Smith hasn't really been in anything all that good. Maybe Enemy of the State. Hitch was okay. To me, he has that kind of Rock Dwayne Johnson syndrome going on. Will Smith is likable, and so is The Rock. They just happen to end up in subpar movies. The Spider. Let's talk about the Spider. I'm sure most film and movie buffs know the story of the mechanical spider and how and why it made it into the movie. In Superman Lives, a movie that was trying to get off the ground in, I think, the 90s, the mechanical spider was meant to be one of the primary antagonists. The idea of the giant spider came from John Peters, a Hollywood producer known for his unconventional ideas. Peters was one of the key figures involved in Superman Lives and reportedly insisted on including a spider in the film, even though it had little connection to the established Superman lore. And here's Kevin Smith with a little explanation on all that, as Kevin Smith was looked at to direct the film.
So anyway, I'm going to meet John Peters, and I go to his place, and he was hardcore producer on Batman. He was there every day. It was kind of his baby from beginning to end. And when you get to his house, it kind of shows, because it's kind of like driving up to Wayne Manor. This is a big mansion through woods and shit like that, and it looks like there's a holographic cave to one side. So you get up and shit, and they bring you in, and he shows up, and he's wearing like short tennis shorts and shit, and he's kind of a built dude, but he's got a perfect head of hair, like well coiffed or coiffed. So I come down and sit down with him. He says, they tell me you got to take on Superman. I said, I do. He said, let me hear it. And I told it to him. After a while, I'm done. He's just nodding, looking at me now. He's like, I got some directives for you if you're going to move forward on the process. Some things I want you to do and don't in the script. He's going, 3 things. Okay. I said, all right. He's going, 1, I don't want to see him in that suit. 2, I don't want to see him fly. And 3, he's got to fight a giant spider in the 3rd act. I said, but the giant spider intrigues me. Why that? And he's like, do you know anything about spiders? And I said, I mean, no. And he said, well, they're the fiercest killers in the insect kingdom. And I was like, what's that have to do with our non-flying Superman?
So the spider was intended to be a gigantic mechanical creature that Superman would have to battle during the movie. It was conceptualized as a powerful, intimidating force, but it was quite out of place for a Superman movie, which led to a lot of confusion and disbelief among fans and filmmakers alike. Could you imagine how stupid that would have been if that actually made it to the theater? John Peters is a producer for the shit movie that became The Wild Wild West, and he got his spider. This was the Reader's Digest version of that story. story. And this is why producers are producers and not filmmakers, and really should give a freer rein over the creators, as perhaps if Peters did this for Wild Wild West, it wouldn't have been the suck shit that it was. The suck shit. That's the moral there. As I said, the television series is so much better. It's like a Star Trek in the Old West. Watch that and forget about this movie. This movie needs to die a complete death and be buried in the vaults of Hollywood forever. It needs to go wild, wild, wild away forever. Far, far, far out west. This movie should have been called Land of You Lost Me after the opening teaser and that stupid opening scene with Matt Lauer. Matt, I like to sexually harass women Lauer. That title may be too long, but it fits. It fits very nicely. Land of the Lost is a children's adventure television series created by David Gerald and produced by Sid and Marty Krofft, who co-developed the series with Alan Fashko. It is a live-action show mixed with stop-motion animated dinosaurs, originally aired on Saturday mornings in 1974 to 1976 on the NBC television network. CBS used it as a summer replacement series from June 22nd to December 28th of 1985 and June 2nd to September 5th of 1987. It has since become a 1970s American cult classic. Krofft Productions remade the series in 1991 and adapted it into a feature film in 2009, and that's what we're going to talk about. An alternate dimension, dinosaurs, a master evil race of beings. This movie was primed for something spectacular. This could have been a spectacular movie. Spectacular never happened. Land of the Lost is a 2009 American science fiction adventure comedy film directed by Brad Silberling, written by Chris Henchy and Dennis McNichols, and starring Will Ferrell, Danny McBride, Anna Friel, and Jorma Taccone, loosely based on the 1974 Sid and Marty Krofft television series of the same name. Loosely, very loosely, extremely loosely based. The film was theatrically released on June 5th of 2009 by Universal Pictures. Here's a big surprise. The film received generally negative reviews from critics, although some praised Friel's performance. Friel's? Anna? Anna was very pretty. You're very pretty, Anna. The film was a commercial failure, grossing just $68.8 million against its $100 million budget. It received 7 Golden Raspberry Award nominations, including Worst Picture, winning Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel. Here is a concept and an IP ripe for a remake, and the powers that be thought it would be a great idea to bastardize the concept and turn it into some kind of fucked up parody. Why was this remotely thought to be a good idea? I don't mind Will Ferrell in it. I've seen the movie Everything Must Go. I know he could be serious. And who the hell told Danny McBride he was funny? Beyond, well, Danny McBride. Danny McBride told Danny McBride he was funny, supposedly, I suppose. Along with Rosie O'Donnell, who I mentioned earlier. How do these people get famous and get jobs when they suck? Who told them they were funny? Who put that thought in their head? It's gotta be some kind of nepotism going on here. There has to be more talented people out there that would love a major motion picture to open up their career. But no, we have to get Danny McBride. It just tears me to death because the original show was great. I mean, it was awesome for what it was. We're talking Saturday morning television. They didn't exactly have an outstanding budget, but what they did with what they had was pretty spectacular. I mean, we talk about sequels and remakes and everything and how much they really don't need to be made, but this was prime for pickings. This was primed to be remade. This could have been awesome, and it turned into this shit show of a freaking farce. So depressing. You got the sleaze stack, you got dinosaurs, you got alternate dimensions. The planet had 3 moons, so they were on some other planet. Oh, it's so frustrating. Well, I don't know. 2029's coming. Maybe they'll remake it again and do it the right way. Who knows? Let's all get together and redo this. Let's all get together. Meet at my place about 6:30 tonight. We'll discuss it, and we'll do a crowdfunding, and we'll make our own fucking Land of the Lost movie and make it right. Who's with me? I see a show of hands. Someone bring coffee. The Mod Squad is an American crime drama series originally broadcast for 5 seasons on ABC from September 24th of 1968 to March 1st of 1973. It starred Michael Cole as Peter Pete Cochran, Clarence Williams III as Lincoln Link Hayes, Peggy Lipton as Julie Barnes, and Tige Andrews as Captain Adam Greer. The executive producers of the series were Aaron Spelling and Danny Thomas. The story follows 3 young delinquents who are recruited recruited by the police to work undercover and help solve crimes. The trio, once in trouble with the law, are given a second chance by a police captain who turns them into undercover operatives. Their youthful looks and street-smart attitudes make them effective at infiltrating criminal circles that the police can't penetrate. Now let's get to the movie. The Mod Squad is a 1999 American action thriller film directed by Scott Silver, and that's starring Claire Danes, Amar Epps, Gaviani Ribisi, and Josh Brolin. You know how much I like to destroy people's names. Based on the television show of the same name, actors Peggy Lipton and Clarence Williams III, Julian Link in the series, make cameo appearances. In the movie, the Mod Squad investigates a murder and uncovers a conspiracy within the police force itself, testing their loyalty and teamwork. The film was a box office bomb, grossing only $15.4 million out of its $21 million budget, and was panned by critics. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 3% of 63 critics' reviews are positive. That's probably 3% too many. The film was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Screenplay, but lost out to another television show turned movie that we did review in this video called Wild Wild West. At the 1999 Stinkers Bad Movie Awards, the film was nominated for 4 awards: Worst Picture, Worst Actress Danes, Worst Supporting Actor Ribisi, and Worst Resurrection of a TV Series. Beyond Danes' performance, because I know she's a good actress, I'll blame the director because that's their job. It was a shitty script. And yes, it is one of the worst resurrections of a TV show ever. This movie tried extremely hard to be something it wasn't. Cool and hip. Instead, you get cringy, overly cliched dialogue and attempted humor that not only doesn't fit in the movie, but lands nowhere. There are 0 laughs. Not that there had to be laughs in this movie, they just tried too hard to get them, and they failed miserably. Mod Squad was a pretty obscure show at the time, and I don't think anyone younger than me even knows what the hell it is, or was. People older than me, of course, know. Even when this movie first came out in 1999, I don't think your desired demographic, which are what are in their 20s, even knew what the hell Mod Squad was. Why even use Mod Squad as the title? It's pretty pointless. There's just an IP out there that, oh, look, an empty IP no one's using. Let's just grab it. An IP that no one knows anything about. I think what would have served the movie better is if it took place during the time frame of the original show. Make it a period piece of sorts. The 1970s was part of the original Mod Squad that was a character in the show. The fundamentals and sensibilities at the time were part of the show. A diverse cast with Peggy Lipton and a black man, Clarence Williams III, were part of the show. You just didn't have that type of cast back then, and that's why the original show was unique. There wasn't any youthful shows back then with a young cast. There wasn't a cast with black people beyond Star Trek and some other shows, especially as the upfront hero and not a fixture in the background. It was a hip and cool show at the time. This was not a cool and hip movie. And the cast of the original show didn't have these over-the-top attitudes. The characters in this movie are two-dimensional. Attitude is how these characters are played during the whole movie. It gets old. Sure, have an attitude in the beginning when you're just getting off the streets and learning your new roles, but have the characters grow from that through the movie. And they kind of do. They kind of do towards the end. But it just gets annoying because it's most of the movie. There's hardly any growth for these characters just so the film could have forced drama and forced conflict. They're just plain stupid. Every scene is played like this. It's so boring. The writing is so lazy and so boring. If you're going to remake a television show into a movie, make the movie like the television show, or don't bother. Call it something else. There's absolutely no reason this movie should have been called The Mod Squad. And make sure you're at least going to equal or outdo the show you're emulating. My examples would be movies like The Fugitive, The Untouchables, even The Flintstones. The Flintstones may have not been a great movie, but the reason I appreciate the movie is that the movie is the cartoon. Scooby-Doo movies are the Scooby-Doo cartoon. They emulate them perfectly. Not saying they're great movies, but at least they're emulating the original show. The Mod Squad movie has no idea what it's doing. This movie is just an uninteresting, unimaginative, uninspired snorefest, and it's clear the writers and makers of this movie had zero idea what made the original show. They just thought it was a bunch of kids playing cops. That's not what the original show was. That was some of the premise, but that wasn't the underlying themes of the show, which is totally lost on these filmmakers. Our next destination in the world of movies of crap, we go to Fantasy Island. The Blumhouse movie is a load of crap. The television show is not. Fantasy Island is an American fantasy drama television series created by Jean Levette. It aired on ABC from 1977 to 1984, and the series starred Ricardo Montalban as the mysterious Mr. Rourke and Hervé Valenciennes as his assistant Tattoo. Guests were granted so-called fantasies on the island for a price. A one-season revival of the series aired 14 years later in 1998, while a horror-themed prequel film was released on February 14th of 2020. That same year, it was announced that a sequel of the series was being produced at Fox. It premiered on August 10th of 2021. Why have I never seen any of these shows or heard of them? Now let's get to the movie of Fantasy Island, also known as Blumhouse's Fantasy Island. It's a 2020 American supernatural horror film directed and co-written by Jeff Wadlow, serving both as a horror reimagining, oh Jesus Christ, and a prequel to ABC's 1977 television series of the same name. It stars a bunch of people I never heard of, except Michael Pena. I know who Michael Pena is. Maggie Q, Lucy Hale, Austin Stowell, Jimmy O. Yang, Jimmy O. Yang, Ryan Hansen, Portia Doubleday, and Michael Rooker. Okay, Michael Rooker, I know. The story takes place on a mysterious tropical island where guests are promised that their deepest fantasies will come true, hosted by the enigmatic Mr. Rourke, who is played by Pena. However, the guests quickly discover that their fantasies come with unexpected, often horrifying consequences, and they must work together to uncover the island's dark secret and survive. So there's Fantasies of Melanie Cole by Lucy Hale. She's seeking revenge on a childhood bully. Gwen Olsen, played by Maggie Q, hoping to change a regretful decision in her past. Patrick Sullivan, played by Austin Stowell, aiming to fill his dream of becoming a soldier. Jack and Brax Weaver, played by Ryan Hansen and Jimmy O. Yang, brothers seeking to live the ultimate party fantasy. It's such like a two-dimensional, stupid, boyhood, dumbass fantasy. Like a 12-year-old would think of. Anyways, as their fantasies spiral out of control, the guests learn that their desires are manipulated by forces tied to the island, leading to shocking twists and revelations. Fantasy Island was theatrically released in the United States on February 14th of 2020, I think I already said that, by Sony Pictures, known for their quality of films. It was released to heavily negative reviews from critics. The film was a box office success. It was a box office success? Okay, grossing $49 million worldwide against a $7 million production budget. Well, that's how Blumhouse makes their money. They make really, really super stupid, low, cheap-ass movies, and then they do get a good return on them because people like to go watch stupid horror movies, apparently. So the original Fantasy Island did touch on a light level of horror elements, so this movie could have fit for that premise. Unfortunately, this is yet another movie that has no idea what the original show was about, or just didn't give a shit. The original show did deal with facing your demons and overcoming them. In this movie, once the plane landed and the passengers were acting like idiots, I knew this was going to be not a fun watch. The script already sucked 5 minutes into the film. How does this shit get made? How do these writers get jobs? Hire me. I will refuse to use cliche dialogue or reuse dialogue. I'll actually sit down and craft out a scene that hasn't been done 100 times before, adding obnoxious characters and cliche dialogue. I'm pretty sure most of you listening to this could do that. It isn't rocket science, as they say, to design an original scene instead of pasting together what has already come before. That's what this movie does. That's what the dialogue in the movie does. And if you can't make something new or fresh or put a different twist on it, then it wasn't meant to be made. To go in, I had no idea this was a Sony film until the logo popped up in the beginning. Sony hasn't exactly made quality movies off late. Their Marvel Comics projects have been a disaster for years. The new Ghostbusters movie are pretty lackluster. Sony makes a lot of shit, is what I'm leading up to. Seeing the Sony logo didn't fill me with overwhelming confidence that this movie was going to be remotely good. And this movie does suck. I hate it. I say hate because I say it towards all these shitfest movies. Spend your time watching the original series. They're so much better. If you like garbage like this and have an IQ in the twin digits, perhaps you'll like this movie. I mean, I don't judge you. If you're dumb, you're dumb. There was a foundation of a good idea here. The ending pretty much pulled the carpet out from any brilliance that it tried to portray. The movie just turned into complete diarrhea. Just juicy shits. Smelly, disgusting, juicy shits. It turned into your typical, stereotypical, stupid, dumbass horror movie in the end. When what they could have done is take the correct road and made the horror elements work out at the end, where everyone gets their fantasy completed. That's how the show premise was. That's how the original show was. Not this shit fest. I hate this movie. I hate it with a passion. I know I say that a lot, but I'm saying it again. This movie is diarrhea shits. It gave me the diarrhea shits. And then at the end, they turned Tattoo into an Asian gay guy. Tattoo is not an Asian gay guy. It's so stupid. This movie's so dumb. And the last leg of our journey today in this video is My Favorite Martian. And My Favorite Martian is an American sitcom that aired on CBS from September 29th of 1963 to May 1st of 1966 for 107 episodes. And the show starred Ray Walston as Uncle Martin, the Martian, and Bill Bixby as Tim O'Hara. The first 2 seasons, totaling 75 episodes, were in black and white, and the 32 episodes of the third and final season were filmed in color. John L. Green created the central characters and developed the core format of the series, which was produced by Jack Chertok. The story begins when Tim O'Hara stumbles upon a crashed spaceship and discovers a stranded Martian. To protect his extraterrestrial identity, the Martian assumes the persona of Uncle Martin, Tim's mysterious uncle. The series follows their comedic adventures as Martin tries to repair his ship and avoid detection while adapting to life on Earth. It was one of CBS's most watched shows during its run, though its popularity waned by the third season, leading to cancellation. The movie My Favorite Martian is a 1999 American science fiction comedy film directed by Donald Petrie, written by Sherry Stoner and Deanna Oliver. The film is loosely based on the 1960s television series of the same name, which starred Ray Walston as mentioned, who also has a supporting role in the film. The film stars Christopher Lloyd, Jeff Daniels, Daryl Hannah, Elizabeth Hurley, Wallace Shawn, and Wayne Knight. The movie begins when a spaceship crash lands on Earth and its passenger, a Martian, played by Christopher Lloyd, finds himself stranded. He is discovered by Tim O'Hara, played by Jeff Daniels, a television news producer whose career is on the brink. Seeing the Martian as his chance for a major news scoop, Tim decides to secretly help him while documenting his existence. The Martian calls himself Uncle Martin, tries to repair his spaceship and avoid being captured by government agents, led by the nefarious Dr. Elliot Coley, played by Wallace Shaw. Inconceivable! Uncle Martin's shape-shifting suit, known as Zoot, is voiced by Wayne Knight, adds to the comedic chaos with its quirky personality. My Favorite Martian was released in the United States on February 12th of 1999, and the film received negative reviews from critics and was a box office failure, grossing $36.8 million against a $65 million budget. They spent $65 million on this shit fest? If you want to shit $65 million and just burn it, you can just give it to me. I come to question how a movie like this is even decided to be made. I mean, actually, a group of people actually thought this was a good idea. A studio took resources and millions of dollars to make this thing. I think this is where normal people with half a brain sit back and ask the lifelong question, why? Who the hell was this movie made for? It plays more like a kid's movie, but what kid cares about My Favorite Martian, even in 1999? Do you realize this is the third movie in this video we're making here that was released in 1999? What was up with 1999? That Y2K thing must have really screwed with people's heads. They had to hurry up and release every piece of obscure shit before civilization came to an end as we knew it. Spoiler alert, that never happened. I didn't like this movie at all. It was just stupid. I don't know why it was made. It makes no sense to me, but that's what I think. That's what you get. We're done with this video. Please subscribe, like, share, and hit the bell for updates. And I'll be making more of these in the future just because I have a good time doing them, and I like to torture myself by watching terrible movies. Apparently. All right, gals and guys, I'll catch you later.